Richard Whitfield stands in David's doorway, flanked by lawyers. His paralyzed daughter Emma grips her wheelchair's arms. "You're choosing them?" Richard's voice cracks with disbelief. "A nobody mechanic over your real family?" 8-year-old Tommy steps forward, tiny fist clenched. "Emma's our family now, not yours." The room explodes. Before we dive in, comment where in the world you are watching from and don't forget to click subscribe. The November rain had turned the bus stop into a shelter of last resort when David Miller pulled his sedan to the curb. Through the windshield wiper's rhythmic sweep, he saw her. A girl, maybe 17, sitting alone in a wheelchair, her thin hospital blanket soaked through. No one else waited at this forgotten corner where the last bus had passed 2 hours ago. David's 8-year-old son Tommy pressed his face against the window. "Dad?" She looked so cold. David knew he should drive on. The world taught single fathers to be careful, especially with teenage girls. But something in her stillness, the way she didn't even lift her head as cars passed, pulled at him. He rolled down his window. "Miss, are you all right?" The girl looked up, revealing a face both beautiful and haunted, pale skin stretched over delicate bones. Her green eyes held the particular exhaustion of someone who'd given up expecting help. "The buses stopped running," she said simply. "My father said he'd come, but that was this morning." David glanced at his watch. "Nearly 8 p.m. Where do you need to go?" She laughed, bitter and small. "The group home on Riverside, though anywhere dry would be better than here." Tommy tugged his father's sleeve. "We have to help her, Dad, like Mom would have wanted." The mention of Sarah, gone 3 years now, settled the matter. David stepped into the rain, approaching slowly so as not to startle her. "I'm David Miller. This is my son Tommy. We can give you a ride." "I'm Emma," she said, studying his face for danger and finding only genuine concern. "Emma Whitfield. But I don't want to be trouble. Your chair folds?" David asked practically. Emma nodded. "Then it's no trouble at all." As David lifted her carefully into the back seat, he noticed how little she weighed, how her legs remained completely still. Tommy immediately began chattering to Emma about his school, his drawings, the pizza they'd had for dinner. She listened with surprising patience, even managing a small smile when Tommy offered her his jacket. "You're very kind," she told the boy. "Just like your dad." The drive revealed Emma's story in fragments. Paralyzed at 14 in a riding accident at her family's estate, parents who couldn't accept an imperfect daughter, moved between group homes and distant relatives, currently living in a state facility after her trust fund mysteriously disappeared. David listened, recognizing the careful way she chose words, the education beneath the circumstances. When they reached the group home, the building was dark except for a single porch light. A handwritten note was taped to the door. "Closed for renovations. Residents relocated." The rain intensified, drumming against the car roof. Emma's shoulders began to shake, though she made no sound. David made a decision that would change everything. "You're coming home with us tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out where you're supposed to be. But tonight, you need somewhere warm and safe." Tommy bounced excitedly. "Yes, we have a guest room and everything." Emma looked between them, this unlikely pair offering kindness without conditions. "Why would you do this for a stranger?" "Because," David said quietly, "someone once told me that grace appears when we least expect it and most need it. Tonight, you need it. We're offering it. That's all." Their small house was nothing fancy, but warm and lived in. Family photos lined the mantel, Sarah's smile watching over them still. David settled Emma on the couch while Tommy brought blankets and his stuffed elephant for comfort. Over hot chocolate, Emma revealed more. Her father, Richard Whitfield, owned several companies. After her accident, she'd become an embarrassment. The trust fund her grandmother left her had been drained by medical bills, or so her father claimed. She'd been cycling through increasingly awful situations for 3 years. David listened, anger building at parents who could abandon their child. Tommy had fallen asleep against Emma's wheelchair, and she gently stroked his hair. "You've raised him well. He's got your heart." "Sarah raised both of us," David admitted. "After she died, I just tried to remember what she'd do, Love first, questions later. That's a beautiful philosophy. David studied her, this young woman carrying such weight. How old are you really, Emma? 17 last month, she said. Though I feel older, 3 years of being passed around ages you quickly. The night deepened, and they talked with surprising ease. Emma was brilliant, discussing literature and science with insights that revealed her interrupted education. David found himself sharing stories of Sarah, of rebuilding after loss, of choosing hope daily. When Emma finally grew tired, David faced a challenge. The guest room was upstairs. Without hesitation, he carried her up, her arms around his neck, trusting completely. As he settled her into bed, she whispered, "Thank you for seeing me as more than my chair." The next morning brought complications. The facility Emma was meant to be at had no record of her. Phone calls revealed a bureaucratic nightmare. Emma had fallen through cracks, existing nowhere officially. David took time off work, determined to solve this. But days turned into a week, and Emma remained with them. She helped Tommy with homework, taught him card games, filled their quiet house with unexpected laughter. Tommy adored her, calling her his big sister, defending her fiercely when neighborhood kids stared. David watched Emma bloom in their small home. Color returned to her cheeks. She smiled genuinely, not the practiced smile of someone used to pity. One evening, while making dinner together, their hands touched, reaching for the same spoon. The moment held, electric and dangerous and wonderful. "I'm 17, Emma said softly. "You're 35, I know what's appropriate. But when I turn 18 in 3 weeks, things could be different. If you'd wait." David's breath caught. "Emma, you don't owe me anything." "This isn't about owing," she said firmly. "It's about choosing. You chose to stop for me. You chose to trust me with Tommy. You chose to fight the system for me. Now I'm choosing too." Tommy interrupted, running in with a drawing. "Look, it's us as a real family." The picture showed 3 figures holding hands, Emma standing tall beside them, no chair in sight. Below he'd written, "Love makes miracles." Emma's eyes filled. "Oh, Tommy, that's beautiful." "Someday," Tommy said confidently, "you'll walk again. Love fixes everything. Dad says so." 2 days later, Richard Whitfield appeared at their door. David had contacted him through Emma's old school, hoping for reconciliation. Instead, the man arrived with lawyers, demanding his daughter return immediately. "She's my responsibility," Richard said coldly. "There are facilities better equipped for her condition." Emma faced her father from her chair, stronger now than she'd been in years. "I'm nobody's responsibility. I'm a person. David and Tommy have shown me more love in 2 weeks than you have in 3 years. You're 17, Richard snapped. "You don't get to choose." "Actually," Emma said calmly, "I do. I'm filing for emancipation. David's already found me a lawyer." Tommy stood beside Emma's chair, small hand protective on her shoulder. "You're mean. Emma's our family now, not yours." Richard's facade cracked. "You're choosing them? A nobody mechanic and his son over your real family?" "Yes," Emma said simply, "because they're everything you're not. They see me, not my chair. They love without conditions. That's real family." After Richard left, raging about lawsuits and consequences, the 3 of them sat quietly. David knelt beside Emma's chair. "Are you sure about this? All of it?" Emma touched his face gently. "I've never been more sure of anything. You saved me, David. Not from the rain or the cold. From disappearing entirely. You made me visible again." The emancipation hearing was 3 weeks away. Emma's 18th birthday fell the day before. David struggled with growing feelings, the propriety of it all. But Tommy had no such qualms, already calling Emma sister, planning their future as a family. The night before her birthday, Emma called David to her room. "Tomorrow changes things legally, but nothing changes how I feel. You brought me back to life, David Miller. If you'll have me, broken pieces and all, I choose you. Both of you. Forever." David kissed her forehead gently. "You're not broken, Emma. You're the strongest person I know. Tomorrow, when you're 18, we'll talk about everything. But know this. You already have our hearts. completely. The next morning, Tommy woke everyone early with birthday pancakes. 18 candles flickered as Emma made her wish. Not for walking again, but for exactly this, a family that chose each other, love that transcended circumstances, and the grace that appears when we stop for strangers in the rain. The hearing granted Emma's emancipation easily. Richard didn't contest, perhaps finally understanding he'd lost her long before David found her. As they left the courthouse, Tommy between them, Emma reached for David's hand. "Now?" she asked. "Now," he agreed, squeezing gently. They were an unlikely family. A widowed mechanic, a paralyzed heiress, an 8-year-old boy with his mother's heart. But love had always been about choosing, and they chose each other daily. 6 months later, when experimental surgery gave Emma partial mobility, Tommy claimed credit. "Told you love fixes everything." And watching Emma take her first assisted steps toward David's embrace, even the doctors had to agree. Sometimes the universe conspires to put broken people together, not to fix each other, but to choose wholeness despite the cracks. David had stopped for a stranger in the rain. In return, he'd found the love that had seemed lost forever, just wearing a different face, rolling instead of walking, but carrying the same grace Sarah would have recognized. Love first, questions later, always and forevers.